This is Debbie Rauscher with the John Burton Foundation. We're going to go ahead and get started. So I want to start by saying welcome to everybody who's on the call this morning. It's great having you all here for this extremely important topic, preventing pregnancy, an important strategy to help foster youth succeed in college. Next slide. I'm going to go over really quickly some technical details. A lot of you have been on these calls before. Most of you are listening on your computers, but if you have any issues with the sound quality, you can also call in using your telephone, and the call-in number and access code is there on the screen. We'd love for you to submit questions. You can submit them throughout the presentation, and then we'll take them at the end. You have a questions panel on the control panel where you can just type your questions and send over to me. And again, we'll direct them to the panelists at the end during our Q&A. Finally, I wanted to mention that all the presentation materials, including a copy of the PowerPoint slides and a recording of today's web seminar, will be posted at the California College Pathways website. So that will be available if you want to listen later or take another look at the slides. Next slide, please. So before we jump into today's primary topic, I had a couple of quick announcements that I just wanted to share with everybody. The first is for those of you who work at a community college campus. I wanted to make sure folks are aware that the new program that was funded under Senate Bill 1023, known as CAFES, which will be a foster youth support program within EOPS at up to 10 community college districts. The Community College Chancellor's Office announced that they're going to be issuing an application to participate very soon. They said early September, and so we're anticipating that that application will be out in 2 weeks or perhaps less. So I want to make sure people are aware of that, and if you are with a community college, that you start having those conversations about submitting that application. A few tips to keep in mind: if you are in a district that has more than one college, we strongly encourage you to make sure that all of the colleges in the district apply, because we do know that the legislation specifies that priority will be given to districts with greater numbers of foster youth. And so the more colleges that are included in a single application, the more competitive you will be. Also wanted to mention that now is the time to bring different departments together to start the planning: EOPS, FYSI, FKCE, our alphabet soup there, your different community partners, students, etc. Really, you need to start planning now if you're planning to submit an application, because like I said, it is expected to come out very, very soon. And so again, just be ready, get your ducks lined up to be able to submit that application pretty quickly. And if any folks on the call have questions about the CAFES program, please feel free to shoot me an email. The second announcement I want to make is that California College Pathways will be hosting our biannual Blueprint Conference this year. It's scheduled for October 27th with reception the night before on October 26th in Los Angeles. And we've got the website there, cacollegepathways.org/blueprint2015. All the information about registration, accommodations, everything is up on that website. So it is filling up. So if you're thinking about attending, I would encourage you to register as soon as possible. Next slide. So I'm extremely excited to introduce the two presenters that we have on this morning's call: Amy Lemley, my colleague at the John Burton Foundation, and Andrea Kane with the National Campaign to Prevent Teen and Unplanned Pregnancy. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Amy, who's going to get us started on this morning's extremely important subject matter.
Thank you, Debbie. Well, again, very, very happy to be here. And we were saying earlier, this is a rare instance where two of our main passions are converging. You know, post-secondary ed for foster youth is certainly the high priority, and then also, you know, planned pregnancy for young people in foster care. And so I want to start, before I jump into the content, just really saying that the experience of foster youth in terms of their sexual health and reproductive life is quite distinct from the general population. And that's why we're really bringing this topic here today. It is, while we know, many young people have challenges in this area. The needs of foster youth are quite distinct and in many ways much more serious. And so there's a wonderful opportunity if we address this to make a huge difference in the lives of young people and promote their post-secondary education success. So on the screen you have a few ways that foster youth differ than their non-foster youth peers. They begin having sexual intercourse at a much earlier age, have more sexual partners, use contraceptives less consistently, and unfortunately experience intimate partner violence that includes forced sex. So there's a lot of different and understandable reasons for this. The abuse that they've experienced in the home, the abuse and maltreatment, the often lack of stability in foster care, but it really results in a set of sexual experiences at an earlier age and a set of riskier sexual experiences. And then this results in, as you can see, a much higher rate of teen pregnancy and childbearing and a much, much higher rate of sexually transmitted infections. Very, very serious. And for a long time, we were kind of in the dark. We knew this, and Illinois had some information, and other states had some information. But in 2011, Emily Putnam Hornstein with the University of Southern California School of Social Welfare really, for the first time, looked at Los Angeles specifically, but California as a state. And what she uncovered was very disturbing. What you have before you is the cumulative percentage of girls who gave birth at least once. Those young people who were in care at age 17, how many of them had their first birth before 18, 19, 20, and 21? And you can see, before the first birth before 18, over 1 in 10 of girls who were in foster care at age 17 give birth before age 18. And then you go all the way over to age 21, and again, it's over 1 in 3 of young people who are in care at 17 give birth at least once. Now, these rates are, orders of magnitude higher than the general population. This is really something where we now are really looking at many, many young people who are in foster care being custodial parents of at least one child. And this little bubble right here really underscores the issue, which is 1 in 3 girls in care who gave birth before they turned 18 will have at least one more teen birth. So we're having a lot of young people in care who are having a first birth, and then a very troubling number who are having a repeat birth. And, some of you might be wondering, what is going on? Why is this happening? And, we're not going to get into a lot of detail about that today, but one thing is that for children and youth in foster care, there is a tremendous lack of clarity about whose responsibility it is to address their sexual health and to address these critical topics of reproductive health. And it's really a case of, everyone looking to the left and looking to the right. There's a really interesting study several years ago where they surveyed social workers and asked them how frequently they're bringing up these topics, and the bottom line is they're not. And so that's not to point the finger at anyone, but it is to highlight the fact that you, as professionals involved with foster youth, have a tremendous opportunity to make a difference by bringing information forth about their sexual health and preventing pregnancy. Obviously it takes men and women to get pregnant. And so what we have here is, really just corresponding information for the rate of pregnancy for girls. Young people in foster care who are young men are also impregnating a partner at rates that are much higher. So this is an issue that is of serious concern for young men and young women. Now, in foster care, as I'm sure all of you know, we've had a major policy change in 2012 when we extended foster care to age 21. And what you have here is just this massive growth in the number of 18 to 21-year-olds. The numbers for these bars are as of April 21st of each year. We go from really about 4,000 as of April 1st, 2015. We have almost 10,000 18 to 21-year-olds in care. And, given the percentage of them at age 21 who are going to be have given birth at least once, we really have a new opportunity in the child welfare system to say, can we change our practice? Can we change our approach to really bring up these topics and to address them so that every child that's born is a planned child rather than an unplanned child, given the implications that come with that. So one of the most unfortunate implications, and this is also from Emily Putnam-Hornstein's research, is the rate of maltreatment. Again, we talk about this intergenerational child welfare experience, but there really hasn't been any hard and fast data on it until Emily's research. And essentially, children who are born to dependents are 300% more likely to have a substantiated report of maltreatment by age 5. So we know that the young people, they're not being supported as young parents, so we need to change that. But the real focus of this conversation is much more about how can we ensure that everyone who doesn't want to become a parent really has that opportunity in a way that that they don't now, because the topic is really not being raised in a consistent manner. So that's a little bit of the context about the kind of sexual health and reproductive lives of foster care. And right at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Andrea Kane with the national campaign.
Thank you so much for setting that stage. It's really, really helpful, and I'm thrilled to be here with all of you today. I actually grew up in Sacramento, so I always love a chance to speak to folks out in California. I miss the state. Just a little bit about the National Campaign to Prevent Teen and Unplanned Pregnancy. If you don't know about us, our mission is to improve the lives and prospects of children and families. And the way that we do that, our strategy, is to reduce teen pregnancy and also unplanned pregnancy, especially among single young adults, which we define as sort of up to age 30. We're a nonprofit, nonpartisan organization. We've been around for nearly 2 decades. We're based in D.C., and we're very research and evidence-based. We work with a wide variety of partners, everyone from policymakers, state and local leaders, folks in the entertainment media, faith-based organizations, clinical staff, judges, community colleges, child welfare agencies, and the list goes on. And the reason that we do all of this is because we know, as Amy suggested, that if we can help people wait to get pregnant and have children until they are ready and want to be parents, that's a very powerful way to make progress on lots of other things that we all care about, whether that's reducing poverty, improving educational attainment and outcomes, having a stronger workforce, having healthier children and families, etc. I just want to share a little bit of history sort of about how we got to this work on community colleges that I think is relevant in teeing up the conversation for today. For our first decade, we focused entirely on preventing teen pregnancy. And I think it's fair to say that really what we meant by that was sort of younger teens, kind of high school, middle school age. As we began to see so much progress there with that population nationally, and certainly in California where you've seen tremendous progress, we expanded up the age scale and began focusing more on older teens, which is 18 and 19-year-olds, as well as young adults, where we have seen much less progress to date. And the question was, well, where and how do we reach older teens and young adults? And that's how we began working with community colleges because, as you all know, they reach millions and millions of older teens and young adults in California and around the country and play a critical role in helping people get post-secondary education. We began that work with community colleges in 2008, and I've had the privilege to lead this initiative along with my colleague Chelsea Connolly since then, and we've learned a whole lot along the way, and I want to share some of that with you today. We've also been working intensely with national, state, and local organizations to prevent teen pregnancy among youth in foster care for a number of years, and are currently working a lot with Amy and colleagues in California. So this is a really fun opportunity to bring those two strands together, the community college work and the foster care work. Next slide. So before we dive in, I just want to talk a little bit about terminology because, as we all know, words matter. when we measure teen pregnancy, when people that work on teen pregnancy define teen pregnancy, that includes folks up through age 19. But as I'm sure those of you who are working with youth at college know, folks that are in college do not think of themselves as teens. At least that's been our experience. In fact, people at age 18 are legally adults. They're the age of majority, and society generally treats them as adults. And this slide tried to show that very, very visually. You know, they can vote, they can serve in the military, they can buy cigarettes. Depending on your state laws, they can even get a tattoo or go skydiving if they choose. So they are treated like adults. And in our work with colleges, what we found is when we sort of slipped into talking about teen pregnancy with college students, they thought we meant the kids down the street at the high school or the middle school. They didn't think that meant them. So with that in mind, next slide, please. We put together this little language guide, if you will, sort of an in and out guide to terms. And some of this may not be surprising to those of you who are working with young people in college, but hopefully it will be helpful nonetheless. So we found when we're talking about college students, we don't talk about teens, we talk about students. We don't talk about teenagers, we talk about young adults. We don't talk about teen pregnancy, we talk about unplanned pregnancy. And I think that's really important because at this point in people's lives, some of the young people are already parents, and some might want to be parents now or soon. So what we're really trying to do is talk to people about planning, about postponing, about becoming a parent when you want to be, which is a little different conversation than just saying we're preventing teen pregnancy. So I hope that that language is helpful in terms of framing. And I should also say that a lot of, it's not only the case that lots of young people in foster care by the time they're 18 are parents, so we're really talking then about postponing and planning subsequent pregnancies, but that's the case for community college students overall. So that's throughout our work, we've been very sensitive to the fact that what we do has to work for young men and women who are already parents. Next slide. So just for those of you who don't spend all your time focusing on pregnancy prevention or unplanned pregnancy, what does unplanned pregnancy mean? Well, the term technically refers to pregnancies that a woman herself reports she was not planning. That means that at the time that she got pregnant, she either did not want to get pregnant then or she didn't want to get pregnant ever. So again, this is not someone else defining whether a pregnancy was planned or not. This is the woman herself deciding that. And I think that's, again, a really important and empowering point. We know from research that among unmarried young women, unplanned pregnancy is very common. Among folks that are 20 to 29 years old, nearly 70% of all pregnancies are reported by the woman herself as unplanned. And another thing that's relevant here is that the majority of those are actually people who've already been pregnant or given birth at least once. So again, we're not talking only about primary prevention. Next slide. So we've now talked a little bit about how pregnancy and parenting is an issue for youth in foster care with the information Amy shared. Now I want to focus on what does this all mean in the higher education context where so many of you are working. And just a couple of key data points to keep in mind. First, only 2% of teens who have a baby before 18 go on to college. That's a national figure, and it's not just youth in foster care. That's everybody. And obviously, some of the programs that you all are doing probably will increase the odds for the youth you serve. They'll be more likely to go on to college and get through college, which is terrific. And while unplanned pregnancy and the responsibilities of being a parent are really important issues for students that can derail a student's education, what we have found is that historically the issue of pregnancy prevention has just not been on the radar at all for community colleges. As many of you probably know, there's a huge national push, as well as a large effort in California to increase the number of college graduates. And a major part of this includes improving retention and completion at community colleges. And as the data points on the slide shows, there's a direct connection between unplanned pregnancy and college completion. So that we don't have as much data as, of course, we would love to have, but we do have enough to confirm what I think common sense and experience already tell us, which is that if someone gets pregnant when they weren't expecting to while they're in college, it makes it a lot harder to get through college. And when I say gets pregnant, I also mean gets someone pregnant, because this does apply both to men and women. So at community colleges, our best estimates are that unplanned births account for nearly 1 in 10 dropouts among female students and 7% of dropouts among male and female students combined, and that 61% of women who have children after enrolling in community college do not finish their education. That is a very high non-completion rate, and it's about 65% higher than the non-completion rate for students who don't have a child in community college. We have found that folks that are working hard to improve college completion, are looking for any and all strategies. There's no silver bullet, and anything that can help contribute to that goal, I think, is welcome. Unplanned pregnancy is clearly one factor, and as I said, it really hasn't been addressed until recently. And we found that once we raise these kinds of points with leaders in the community college world and present some data, it resonates very strongly with college administrators, faculty, staff, who often have experience of students who have struggled, put school on hold, or disappeared following a pregnancy or getting someone pregnant. We hear stories like this all the time, with faculty saying, just last month I had 3 students tell me that they were pregnant and they were going to be gone for a while, and that they'd be back right after they delivered their child, and sometimes they come back and sometimes they don't. So we hear those kinds of things a lot. Next slide. A couple other reasons why unplanned pregnancy really matters to the higher education institutions themselves. We know that even if students are able to stay in school, the drama and the stress around a pregnancy or a pregnancy scare or delivering a child place a lot of extra stress, emotional sort of burden, and financial burden, of course, on the students, and that can really change their academic trajectory. So they may not do as well in school, they may take a less demanding course load, they may take a lot longer to finish. There's a lot of other repercussions. In addition, this can result in increased demands and costs on the institutions as they try to provide support to students in college, whether that's child care or other supports for students who are parents, which of course are really important, and we definitely want the colleges to provide those kind of supports, but there's never enough to go around. A key point I want to make here is that this issue of unplanned pregnancy and parenting is a big challenge for any students at community colleges, not just youth who've come through foster care. I think this is really important to underscore for 3 reasons. First, and I know you all know this, but when you talk about issues like planning pregnancy with the youth you work with, you of course don't want to imply that you're singling them out. This is a widespread problem. Second, none of our materials for colleges and college students specifically reference foster care. They were developed for all students, and I think it'll be interesting to see if you all think they work for youth in foster care, and maybe whether any adaptations are needed or tweaks. And 3, the resources and ideas that we discuss would also be of great value to other students on the campuses that you might be working on. So we encourage you to share them with your colleagues and with other students as well. Next slide. As we talked about, I'm sure a number of the students that you're working with are already parents, and that is true with community college students at large. As the slide shows, 1/4 of college students now are parents. That's a national figure, and that's a growing figure. The number of unmarried or single parents among undergraduate students has almost doubled in the past 2 decades. And we know that students with children face unique challenges and need support to complete their education. One survey found that students with children were twice as likely not to complete post-secondary education than those students without children. So we know that this is complicated enough if you aren't coming through the foster care system with all the additional challenges that those young people face, but it may be even more challenging for the young people you're serving. Okay, next slide. So many people assume that by the time students get to college, they know everything they need to know about pregnancy, contraception, how not to get pregnant, and the sad truth is that we've learned through extensive research with young adults generally, as well as with community college students, that that's simply not the case. These are really complicated issues. Students come to college with a lot of myths, misinformation, gaps in knowledge, and what we like to call magical thinking. In some places, in some states, students aren't getting decent sex education in high school. So they're coming to college without really having learned what they needed to know. In other places, even if they do get good sex ed in high school, what they might need something new and sort of an update or a booster by the time they get to college because their lives are different than they were a few years ago. So this idea that sex education is only for high school students, I think, is not really the case. But sometimes you have to kind of make that case to folks at the college level because they sort of were hoping someone else had already taken care of this for them. So a couple of interesting things to note. We've got lots more data on this. We see a real gap between students' aspirations and their actions. And obviously this isn't limited to students. We all sometimes suffer from a gap between what we know we want to do and what we actually do. But 82%, 4 in 5 community college students report that having a child while in school would make it harder to accomplish their goals. So they know that in their heads. More than 3/4 of students say that preventing pregnancy is very important to them, yet even among those students, 1/3 say it was likely they would have sex without using birth control in the next 3 months. So definitely a disconnect between sort of what they know they want to do, the path that they're on, and then what happens in practice. And again, that is not limited to college students at all. Just one example, I think, of some of the knowledge gaps or misinformation or challenges we're up against. The last bullet on the slide, I always find kind of, deeply disturbing and shocking. 4 in 10 unmarried young adults, and this is from a national survey we did of unmarried young women and men, believe it doesn't matter whether you use contraception or not. When it is your time to get pregnant, it will happen. So we're seeing that there's just a lot of fatalism, magical thinking, real challenges and a real opportunity for education, which all put students at high risk of unplanned pregnancy, which of course can derail their education, among many other things. So next slide, please. So on the challenging side, just to sum it up, students really don't know as much as they think they do, or we might hope that they do, and we have this mismatch between aspirations and sort of behavior or actions. On the glass half full side, there is a huge opportunity here for you and other folks like you to really try to make a difference in the lives of the young people that you are serving at the college level, and to provide education. And we always like to say, think about all the other life skills and wraparound services and supports that you offer to students, or that colleges offer to students, particularly youth coming through foster care. How to manage their time, their money, help with arranging child care if they're already parents, transportation, housing, other things. Pregnancy planning and prevention is just one more thing that needs to be part of that mix, and I think for too long has not been. Next slide. So based on our experience over the past few years, We've tried to come up with some specific strategies that colleges can adopt to address the issue of unplanned pregnancy and its connection with college success. And I should have said earlier that even though we started with community colleges, we've really learned that these issues also are very relevant to young people students at four-year colleges and universities. And we often then drop the word community from a lot of our materials and stuff because we don't want to exclude folks working with students at colleges and universities that are not community colleges. And I know some of you may be in that situation. So we came up with 4 general categories of strategies, and I'm going to give you a little bit of information about each of them and some of the resources we have. As you can see on the slide, the first is the topic of pregnancy prevention, unplanned pregnancy, is perfect to incorporate into student support services such as orientation, first-year experience, and other college success courses or seminars. Second, this is a great topic to integrate into academic courses, and faculty are always looking for creative ways to meet their learning objectives in whatever course they teach, and creative faculty can find really interesting ways to weave this topic into a wide range of academic courses. Third, there's just a need to raise awareness about this issue for students and provide resources and programming through things like college websites, student services or student life, student activities, and counseling and advising. Many opportunities here to integrate this topic into both individual and group supports that I imagine many of you provide to the students you work with. Fourth, and this is really important, is to strengthen links to healthcare services, and specifically in this case, sexual health and contraceptive services for students either on campus or off campus. And we're just always amazed at how much students don't know about what they might be eligible for and where they can go to get it. Next slide. So with all of that in mind, we have tried to come up with a wide range of materials and resources. Almost everything is free that folks can use as they're working in the college setting. And on our website, you will find lots of research and wonky fact sheets and background information. You'll find videos of students and faculty talking about this topic, which we find can be very helpful in starting the conversation. We have online lessons that I'll show you in a minute. We have course templates that faculty have developed to weave this topic into academic courses. And then we've created websites or portals on websites specifically for folks working in the college context. We're also always available to provide technical assistance and help walk people through this information. And finally, we have a quarterly update that we encourage you all to sign up for that provides information to folks working on unplanned pregnancy in a college setting. Next slide, please. So I want to dive in a little bit on the first strategy of incorporating unplanned pregnancy prevention into student success courses and or orientation. We found after trying a number of different things that one of the best things we could do was to create some very short, self-contained, engaging online lessons that are available for faculty and staff at colleges to use in a variety of settings. We did that a couple years ago. We have been, they're available for anyone to use and download from our website. And we have had very good response to these tools, so we encourage you to check them out. Just to tell you a little bit more about them, next slide please. There's 3 lessons. They each take about 30 minutes for the students to complete. Faculty often assign them outside of class time, so students can do them on their own, but at the end of each lesson, faculty gets there's a quiz and the faculty member knows that the student has done it, so there's accountability built in. The first lesson is basically, why should you care about this topic? The second one is basic sort of sex education and birth control information. And then the third is very action-oriented, make a plan and take action. At the bottom of the slide, you'll see the URL on our website where you can go to the faculty page, which is where you enter these lessons, and like I said, they're free. When you go to this URL, next slide please, what you will see is this page. I need to tell you about that wonderful Back Off Baby, I'm in School logo. That was actually created by a community college student in Maryland as part of her graphic design class, and we thought it really summed up quite beautifully the whole point here. And so we've now made it our logo for a lot of this work, and people get a good laugh out of it, and a lot of people actually call these now the Back Off Baby lessons, which is kind of funny. So at this faculty page, there's a ton of great information. There's a guide for faculty, there's supplementary information, a guide for students, pretty much everything anyone needs to get started with this. And we hope that you will find it very user-friendly. Next slide. In a perfect world, I would sort of walk you through these things and be very interactive, but that's probably not possible technically. So I'm just going to show you what you could expect if you went to these lessons. This is the first lesson. It has a lot of great videos, lots of interactive information, self-checks, things that are very engaging for students, and then also take the students to a lot of great resource information. But it talks about how might an unplanned pregnancy affect my finances, my social life, my education. Really just tries to get students to think about this issue, whether they're already a parent or not. And a lot of the videos, including the one that's shown there, are from a student who's already a parent. Next slide. As I mentioned, we find that students don't know nearly as much as they think they do or hopefully need to know about birth control, and in particular they don't know about the full range of birth control methods available to them. So we spend a lot of time in Lesson 2 really trying to educate them about that. We also introduce students to our online birth control information site called bedsider.org, which, if you don't know about, is a terrific site designed for young men and women, sort of 18 and over, that has great features and resources, a method explorer, fact or fiction videos, lots of real story videos, a clinic lookup, and lots of great information. So we weave that into these lessons so that students know that that's a resource for them whenever they want it. So in Lesson 2, they learn a lot about the different methods of birth control, really with the idea that maybe they will find something that will be the best for them at this point in their lives. Next slide, please. Oh, I should have also said that another great feature of Bedsider is that there's a guy's guide to birth control, and that also gets people get introduced to that in Lesson 2 because, as Amy said at the beginning, we need to make sure that we're reaching young men and young women on all of this. And young men have responded really positively to these lessons. The third lesson really is the action part, and students are actually asked to come up with a plan. They don't need to share the plan with anyone, it's for themselves, but we take them through how to find a birth control clinic near them. They can put in their zip code and find out. They can figure out whether they might be eligible for free or low-cost birth control. Now, your youth and foster care should be eligible to receive birth control through Medicaid, so that might be a place where you would want to just make sure that was clear to them. But they often don't know where they can go to get it. So this is a very action-oriented lesson. Okay, next slide. Because we are a very research-based group, we want to know if these lessons are working. So we have built in, there's actually an evaluation version of the lessons, and anyone who wants to actually use that version is welcome to do so you can see how your students do. But we did a pre-post evaluation with about 3,000 students at 4 community colleges around the country, and we've seen really positive results. After completing the lessons, students were significantly more likely to believe a pregnancy would make it more difficult to achieve their educational goals. So it really got them to stop and think about that a little bit, and have a clear plan for what they were going to do to prevent an unplanned pregnancy, to know where they could go in their community to get birth control other than condoms. I think people often just think about condoms, although those are also very important, especially for preventing STIs. And then to believe that it was realistic to expect a person to use birth control when they have sex, because I think we often hear from students, oh, my partner just won't do that, or it's too hard, or all these other sort of rationales that come up. But I think it really got people thinking, no, this is something that I can do. I can take control of this. I think that was very important. And we have a whole evaluation report that has many more evaluation findings. Next slide, please. I won't read them here, but these are just some comments from students on the online lessons, and I think it gives you a sense that a wide variety of students found them valuable, including students who aren't having sex right now, and I think that's important to stress as well. Next slide. So the second strategy, as I mentioned, is this idea of integrating the topic of unplanned pregnancy into academic courses. We did a project with the American Association of Community Colleges a few years ago where they actually made mini grants to faculty to do this. And these faculty came up with incredibly creative things to do. And all of that you can read about at this report, Make It Personal, How Pregnancy Planning and Prevention Help Students Complete College, which is on our website. Also has some great case studies and testimonials. But I think that is a strategy that is definitely worth exploring, and we do have templates from some of those faculty that other faculty are welcome to use. Next slide. As I mentioned, the third strategy is really just raising awareness and providing resources to students. We have lots of resources that are available for you to use. Bedsider.org, as I mentioned, has lots of great resources. We have posters such as the one on the left here about different methods of birth control. We have postcards. We have things that are sort of very great. They're great for being used in a clinical setting or in a counseling office, and we have other things that are really funny and maybe more edgy, so people can kind of find what works for them. We also have videos. We found a lot of colleges want to use videos to start conversations in group settings. So we have DVDs, for example, from 16 and Pregnant with discussion guides, and some colleges have found those really helpful with their students. They'll show those in a dorm or in a discussion group. We have a video called 9, which looks at pregnancy from the young man's perspective, and a lot of people found that very helpful. And then for students, to reinforce this idea that not everybody is having sex, and that's okay too, we like to remind people that MTV's Virgin Territory is a great way to have that conversation, and that can be downloaded from the MTV website or watched on the MTV website. Next slide. We've also just created a kind of one-stop shop for all of our information related to colleges, and encourage you to check this out. The URL is bedsider.org/student-sex-life, and this has information for the students themselves, so it's a great place to refer students. It has information for providers, health providers, and then it has information for the faculty and staff, and that takes folks back to where our online lessons are and fact sheets and all the other things I mentioned. But just this is a great one place to go if you're working with folks, if you're at a college or you're working with college students. So we encourage you to check that out. The last strategy that I mentioned was the importance of connecting students to health services and high quality contraceptive care. And I can't underscore this enough, because we can do all the education in the world, but if students don't know where they can go and how they can actually then get contraception that helps them avoid getting pregnant till they want to, we're only sort of doing half of the job. So I think in particular it's really important for you all to know what is available on the campus you might be working on. A lot of California community colleges do have health centers, unlike community colleges in other places. They may or may not provide all of the methods of contraception, so then knowing who in the community is available to provide other methods of contraception is really important, and those are fantastic partners that you can reach out to and work with, and we encourage you to forge those partnerships. Through our bedside or clinic lookup, you can figure out who are the, where can folks go in the community to get free or low-cost birth control. The California Family Planning Council and its Teen Source project also has a great function like that, where you can find out who in California is providing services and where folks can go. So I encourage you to check out their great resources as well. So finally, just to conclude, just to share some tips and lessons we've learned along the way. First is don't reinvent the wheel. There is lots out there that we hope will be helpful to you, including all of the materials that I've talked about today. And as I said, the California Family Planning Council and their Teen Source project also has great information about contraception. Recognize that a lot of faculty and staff working at community colleges may not be comfortable talking about some of these issues. I imagine all of you are perfectly comfortable, but we found that just this is not something that a lot of folks have been trained to do, and that's okay. And so that's part of why we've tried to package stuff up and make it as easy as possible for folks on colleges to offer this information without necessarily becoming experts. Third, as I said, make sure to know who in your community is providing good contraceptive care and look to them as great resources and experts, both in terms of referrals and perhaps to come onto campus and share information. Meeting students where they are and listening to them. I imagine all of you working with youth in foster care do this every day. This is not a new concept for you, but I think we've found that for a lot of folks working in community colleges, this can be an uncomfortable topic, and people might find that what students are doing, their behavior, is not something that maybe the faculty or staff at the college are enamored with, and it may be not. Students may be doing things in their sexual lives. They're not exactly what the faculty or staff might choose if those were their children. And our point is simply you have to meet students where they are, support them so they can make good decisions that will help them stay in school. And at the end of the day, it is about the students and not about us. So our job is to support them in what they need. And with that, I would just show you our contact information, both for myself and for my colleague Chelsea, who I mentioned. We are at your disposal to answer any questions. And on that slide, you can also see how you can sign up for our quarterly college updates. So with that, I'm happy to take any questions.
Great. Thank you so much for all of that valuable information. If folks do have questions, feel free to send them in using the questions panel on your control panel. We do have a couple questions that have come in. So the first question is there any data related to students with children who have completed post-secondary education?
Any data for students who, I'm not sure I understand the question. So for students whose children have completed post-secondary education, or?
I think the question is just asking about, I'm not sure, perhaps it's the person who sent the question if you want to clarify, but I think it's just asking about where they can find some data sources around the percentage of parenting students who do manage to complete post-secondary education.
Yeah, there has been quite a bit of work done on that. I would encourage you to maybe look at the American Association of University Women. They've done some work on this, particularly, I think it was more on, well, I guess they did community colleges and four-year colleges and universities. So I would look at their research. I would also look at the Institute for Women's Policy Research, who's done some work on this issue. And Achieving the Dream has some information focused on community colleges and student parents at community colleges that might be helpful.
Great. Another question, are your materials only available to in college settings, or if somebody works at a nonprofit service provider, can they access all of these resources as well?
Absolutely, they're available to anyone. The materials that I talked about today were sort of developed with a college setting in mind, but I think you're welcome to use them in other settings. And I would say that bedsider.org, that's available to anyone. And I think particularly if you're in a community setting, I would definitely encourage you to check that out, because those resources are perfect for anyone, anywhere.
So next question is, I've heard that peer-driven pregnancy prevention is effective, at least among high school students in California. What role, if any, can and or should peers play at the college level?
It's a great question. I think, we don't have research about this at the college level, but I think anecdotally I can tell you that in the project that we did with the American Association of Community Colleges that I touched on very briefly, there were students in classes who were doing service learning activities to help reach other students on campus about this topic of unplanned pregnancy, and that was very powerful. I mean, students, no surprise, like to hear from other students, and there's a lot of power in that. I think the challenge is how to make sure that the peer educators are, well informed, well trained, so that the information they're providing is up to date, accurate, etc. There is one project that we have worked with in Georgia where they are doing peer education. The Georgia Coalition for Adolescent Power and Potential is working with one community college and I think one university now as well to do a project called Peer Up, and they are doing peer education about unplanned pregnancy in the college setting, and then the students are also taking the online lessons that I mentioned. So I can certainly provide a connection to that if you need it.
So next question is, do your materials solely address pregnancy prevention, or do they address STI prevention as well?
Good question. They primarily focus on pregnancy prevention, but we do some discussion of STI prevention within the lessons, and Bedsider, which as I said is kind of the underlying source of information for a lot of the information, does address STIs to some extent. We don't want to pretend that we are the be-all and end-all for all STI prevention information. There are also really good sources of information for that, but we definitely do talk about it, and we try to make clear whether a method of birth control does or does not help prevent STIs, because that's really, really important.
Have you done any work in educating the parents or caregivers of incoming college students on the subject of birth control? Is that an effective approach?
It's something we have definitely talked about. We have not begun to do that yet. I think there are resources through some other organizations that are focused on educating parents of students going to college about a whole bunch of things that will help their students succeed in college. And some of those do touch on sex and relationships. As far as I know, I'm not aware of anything specifically focused on youth in care or parents of youth in care.
This is Amy. I can chime in.
Yeah.
As part of our work we have a year-long initiative working with 6 counties. We just completed 2 trainings, 4 counties that are specifically on training social workers and caregivers using a evidence-informed curriculum that has been used and evaluated in Illinois. And so the John Burton Foundation is going to continue to work with those counties to implement it so that the caregivers of youth in foster care and their social workers are prepared to have these conversations and help them access these resources. And if anyone wants to know more about that curriculum and how they can ensure that their county is implementing it, just contact us.
I think it's a really important point, though, because it goes back to this point that I think a lot of people think that by the time someone's 18, like they have all this stuff figured out. And I think what we've learned is that even older youth care a lot what their parents or caregivers think about these topics, and there's a lot more we need to do together to make sure that the caregivers or the parents are meeting those older youth, college-going students where they are in their lives right now.
So the next question is, are there any specific resources for youth who are pregnant or parenting while on campus to help them stay in school? And anything that's known about success rates from using those resources?
Yeah, some of the ones I mentioned earlier, like I said, the Institute for Women's Policy Research has done some work on supporting students who are parents. They actually did an interesting survey with student parents in Mississippi, and they're also providing technical assistance relative to the Pregnancy Assistance Fund, the federal Pregnancy Assistance Fund grants. I don't know off the top of my head if California is getting one of those, but through that funding source, some states are providing supports to pregnant and parenting students, whether in high school or college. Some states are focusing on high school, some are focusing on college. I'm trying to think if the National Women's Law Center has a lot of great resources on supporting high school students who are parents. I don't know offhand if they've got stuff for college students. And then, as I mentioned, AAUW has definitely done research and work on this issue. And I remember that one of the, no surprise, but one of the big things they found was the critical importance of providing child care to those student parents.
And Amy, are there specific resources through AB 12 that are available to parenting youth?
There are. Thanks for asking. The first one, as I'm sure many of you know, is any parenting dependent receives an infant supplement, and that's a $411 additional payment that goes to the parenting dependent. Secondly, if a young person is placed in a supervised independent living placement, which is one of the different foster care placements, they're effective July 1st eligible for an additional $200 if they enter into a kind of a parenting support plan with a mentor. And so what this really means for young people in foster care is if they're in a SILP, they're getting a basic rate for foster care, which is about $838. They're getting an infant supplement, which is $411, and then they're getting another $200. So if you can ensure that if you are working with a parenting foster youth, that they get all of those different things, they're actually, as a family of two anyway, moving above the poverty line. So making sure that you know and help them, be an ally, an advocate. It's particularly the thing that went into effect July 1st is very new, and so we want to, reach out and make sure young people who are eligible do receive it. Unfortunately, for child care, the children of parenting dependents are not a priority for subsidized child care, and many around the state are working to address that so that they are able to attend community college and work and do a variety of things. So they're on the same kind of list as other low-income parents. But schools that are able to, offer additional subsidized child care, that would be very helpful.
And I would just add as well that at the community college level, there is a program called CARE, which is part of EOPS and specifically for parenting students who are enrolled in CalWORKS. And so that program can provide some additional child care resources. And the new CAFES program that I mentioned at the beginning, which is going to be rolling out in the spring for those districts that are able to receive those funds, using that for subsidizing child care costs is an allowable use. So we're anticipating that we'll see some additional child care resources being made available once that program rolls out as well. And so a follow-up question, Amy, on the additional $200 for youth in foster care. Can you just repeat what the name of that program is and how a child welfare worker applies for that, or how a youth goes about getting that?
Well, I guess what I would call it would be AB 2668, Assembly Bill 2668. That is the bill that established it. The Department of Social Services has not issued the all-county letter on the procedure yet, but the department has told us that young people will, the law went into effect July 1st, that they will be able to receive it effective that date. So I think I don't have like a kind of a great process to share with you right now, but we will very shortly once that all-county letter comes out, and we're in regular communication with the department, and they have committed to having it out very, very soon. Of course, we wanted it out before July 1st, but I know they're working hard on it, and we're going to keep pressing until it does get issued. And then when it does get issued, we will share it in our newsletter and circulate it far and wide so that young people can get that money as soon as possible. But it does require them to, again, enter into a responsible parenting plan with a mentor. And so one thing anyone can do at this point is begin to think, who is that person who could potentially play that support role in their lives, and to begin to have those conversations. They are subject to a criminal background check, so in the kind of list of people in their lives to consider that.
Great. Well,
it looks like the state of California is getting the Pregnancy Assistance Fund grant that's going to the Department of Public Health, and it looks like it's focused on high schools and community centers, but certainly for those of you working with youth in care who are high school age, this could provide some valuable support for pregnant parenting youth. So I would encourage you to check that out. It's called the Pregnancy Assistance Fund grant.
Great. Well, that is all the questions that we have come in. So I wanted to say one last thing, which is we're going to be sending out a survey to everybody who was on this call. It takes literally about 2 minutes to complete the survey, but it's really helpful to us if you can give us a little feedback on this webinar. We will be sending out the PowerPoint slides as well as a link to a recording of today's seminar. And finally, I just want to say a super big thank you to Andrea and Amy for taking the time out to be on this webinar this morning. And with that, that concludes this webinar. Thank you very much.